Okay, here is the topic that we're going to be talking about today. I call it a transdemic. Yeah, a transdemic, kind of like plandemic or epidemic. And I'm just asking a simple question because it is all about exploring this topic, exploring the numbers, and then trying to make heads and tail out of something that's very confusing. So the question is very simply, is the Hollywood kids transdemic a form of child sacrifice for fame? Now, what I mean by this, the number of famous parents, Hollywood actors' kids that have now come out as trans. Now, some say, this is up to you to decide. I'm just going to give you facts and we're going to talk about it because we should question everything. But some believe the transdemic, the number of Hollywood elites that have trans kid, is actually, well, a sacrifice, a child sacrifice. They say that in order to move up in the Hollywood chain in the satanic club, and for the celebrity to stay relevant, they have to push one of the causes. Some are saying that these causes is they are sacrificing their kids to the trans agenda. Now, whether that's true or not, nobody knows, but that's not what is important. What is important? Why does it matter? It matters because celebrities have a huge influence. It matters because gender transitions have increased by 500% in the last decade because of propaganda. And it matters because the majority of these transitions happened between the years of 13 and 17 years old, and because the suicide rate among those is 8 times higher than the average population. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at this. You make your own decisions, but I'm telling you, the numbers strike me as odd when I put my scientific hat on. You see, several high-profile celebrities have been publicly discussing or reporting as having children who identify as either transgender or non-binary. Some people say there's a correlation between people coming out saying their kids are trans and all of a sudden they're relevant again. They're getting new series, they're getting new albums, they're getting new movies. Who knows? But this information comes from publicly available interviews and social media and media reports. I'll give you an example. Charlize Theron has spoken about her adopted child, Jackson, who identified as a girl, he's a boy, from around the age of 3. Now, I think both of her children are. Now, Theron has remained active in her upcoming project. She's got one about to release called Apex. She starred as Calypso in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, just released, right? And she's got additional films in development. One is called Tyrant. The other one's called Mysteria. Again, the only filter I'm applying is it's amazing how many of these people are getting brand new projects. Anyway, one of the other ones you probably know about is Jamie Lee Curtis. She has discussed her daughter, Ruby Guest, who came out as transgender around 2000. Curtis has appeared in multiple recent projects. Freakier Friday, that came out. The Last Showgirl, recurring role in the Bear, the new series Scarpetta. Other films coming out, such as Cinder and Ella McKay. Now, Naomi Watts, Liv Shriver, they publicly supported their daughter, Kai. Now, remember, when I say daughter, I'm saying what they described versus how they were born as son, but they support their daughter, Kai Shriver, who's been getting a lot of modeling gigs. Watts has starred in recent television and film work, including the Hulu series All's Fair, who now has more seasons, Too Much, The Friend in 2024, and an upcoming project called The Housewife in 2026, and Love Story. Annette Bening, Warren Beatty. They have a son. Transgender means it was a daughter, became a son. Stephen Ira. Benning has continued to work on projects after being out for a long time. Now she's back with The Bride and additional films such as In Love and Development and a new series. Robert De Niro's daughter, Arian, has publicly identified as a trans woman. It's a boy, identifies as a girl. And of course, he's got all kinds of projects, including Netflix miniseries 0 Day, The Alto Nights, Tin Soldier, upcoming films called The Whisper Men, and Focker-in-Law coming out. Again, just notice all these people are very vocal politically, very vocal Trump haters, very vocal DEI woke agenda, and they also have trans kid. Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union have spoke about their daughter, Zaya Wade. Marlon Wayans referred to a child named Kai in connection with gender identity. Wayans also co-wrote, produced, and starred in Scary Movie 6. That's about to be released. Long-running, very great comedy franchise. Cynthia Nixon, she has a son, Samuel Moses, who's transgender. Jennifer Lopez, her child, Emmy. Well, they got new films. The one was A Kiss of the Spider Woman, and then Atlas, and then Unstoppable, a new romantic comedy, The Office Romance, and now additional projects like The Last Miss Paris, that's in production. Jennifer Gardner, Ben Affleck, their child Finn, same. Garner has ongoing work in season 2 of the Apple TV series, The Last Thing He Told Me. It's got the Peacock series, 5-Star Weekend, Rosie O'Donnell, etc. All kinds of people. Dean McDermott has children that are on the spectrum. I don't know, what you want to say, but a tremendous amount of celebrities have trans children. It seems to be recurring at an incredibly higher rate than, normal citizens. Now, I want to be very careful with this. All we're doing is looking at the numbers. All I want to do is see, are these numbers truly holding up when we look at the general population, right? What does society say? Now, some of the other names that appear on public lists, Cher with Chaz Bono, not every name circulating in discussion is equally dominated in primary statements from the individual involved. Some of them trying to keep it private, some of them trying to keep it hush-hush, right? But some of these get a lot of public attention because of their famous folks. And just so happening that a lot of this is now being forced on us, like in Homer's Odyssey, etc. Now, when it comes to the data on the prevalence of transgender identification, you got to understand that it's younger people that are more susceptible. Surveys such as the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Systems indicates that of adults 18 to 24, that identifying as transgender rose approximately 0.59% in 2014. That 0.59, we'll call it a 0.5%, is now 3.1%, and that was a 2023 number. That's an order of magnitude of 4 to 5-fold. For some reason, it's shot through the roof. Now, I say a lot of it is media portraying it. They're considered hip, they're getting fame, they're getting celebrity, they're getting hoopla. It kind of sees that it's driving it, right? Now, clinical and insurance data are reflecting a parallel rise in formal diagnoses. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a fact. It's basically how a medical professional, and sadly, medical professionals are now incented to have these diagnoses, and they want to be the cool doctor. Well, I've got a kid, and they found out they're trans, and I'm helping them through it. Right now, one analysis of U.S. insurance claims found that there are roughly 42,000 children that were diagnosed in 2021. That was triple the figure for 2017, with a number exceeding over 100,000 in a multi-year span. In England, primary records are showing a 50-fold increase. 50-fold increase among those that are 18 but under, right? And 21 under. That's just from 2011 to 2021, a 50-fold increase. Now, what's increased with this is referral patterns and specialized clinics. In other words, now they have specialized clinics solving this because it gets insurance coverage, etc. That's going on. Now we're starting to get numbers pretty solidly in the 13 to 17 range. Western societies going through the roof. Now, mental health outcomes associated with transgender identification have been examined in a very large population in studies. A nationwide Danish study covering more about 6.6 million people over 4 decades found that individuals recorded as transgender had standardized rates of suicide attempts approximately 7.7 times greater. Now, pay attention to this because we're going to tie it back to Hollywood. That's a 700% increase. They are 3.5 times more likely if they try suicide, somebody who's transgender, 3.5 times likely to be successful, meaning they terminate themselves. Now, if you just think of it as heaven and hell, you can take a kid who's disturbed, or you can take a kid who swears they're transgender. That kid is 3.5 times the one that identifies as transgender to meet their untimely, horrible death. Think of it as demonic. They're going to check in to check out much quicker. Do you see the pattern there? It's accelerating them off the human plane. Now, if they were dealing with transgender adults, it falls. They don't have these issues in transgendered adults. Adults that transgender, that transition, they don't have the thing. They only have this when it comes to the young, the ones that are gender dysphoric youth. By the way, if you look at gender dysphoric youth, the highest category of youth, you go to the next level up. Well, what group of youth do they belong to? Children that are on the autism spectrum. That's it. And of course, now an entire protocol has emerged with companies like Pfizer who have these clinical protocols and estradiol and testosterone preps and spironolactone, I think is how you say it. All of this. Market analysts project the growth in U.S. sex reassignment hormone therapy segment that it's in the billions with a compound annual growth rate of 7%. It's growing non-stop. Now, what some people say is celebrity visibility contributes to broader cultural awareness. Or could it be celebrity visibility makes it hip and cool, and people want to associate with being hip or cool? See, that's the big debate. Because this is not trimming down, it's going up. And as you look at it, these elements, public family disclosures by entertainers, high visibility film and television projects, it increases a rapid rise in use identification, a rapid rise in clinical referrals. In other words, it's kind of like a media driver, don't you think? So I decided to look at this media driver. Okay? So let's take our entire United States population. Let's just look at the numbers. And go back to the original premise. I said some people are saying that celebrities are sacrificing their kids to this trans agenda. Many people call it satanic. In other words, you can have my child, but you're going to give me new fame or longer fame. let's look at just the celebrity numbers. I don't know that anybody's ever done these numbers before. Everybody's going to debate these numbers. You just research it yourself. But here you go. If you were to look at the United States, 100th, right? 100th of 1%. That means you take 1% and you divide it into 100 pieces. 100th of 1%, okay, of the United States population identifies or is basically an actor or an entertainer. 1/100th of 1%. A single hundredth, right? A fraction. 100th of 1%. Now, when we take all of those people that are in the entertainment class, is that okay? And now we're only asking a very simple function. How many of you are actually gainfully employed by being an entertainer? It's not people that have appeared in a commercial, that's an actor, or not people, well, I do some stunt work or whatever. That's that first number. If you just look at the overall United States population, it's still a tiny fraction, well below 100th of 1%. But now we're going to move to the category of those actors, people that identify as actors. How many of them are actually successfully, gainfully employed? And that means you're getting movies, you're getting television series, etc. Well, that number is 34/10,000ths of 1%. The U.S. population well below 100th of 1%. Of that 100th of 1%, still applying it to U.S. population, 34/10,000ths of 1% are actually successful actors. Now, if you take those that are successful in making a living, you have something very interesting. Out of those that are successful in making a living, 1.81% of those working actors, 1.81% of those working actors have something in common. What is that something in common? That something in common is they happen to have a child who identifies as trans. Let me relate that back to the United States population. 22,600 2,500,000. Let me say that again. 22,600 2,500,000 of the United States happens to have what is identified as a trans kid, population-wise. However, if you take the Hollywood class, those that are successful, those that make millions, those that get the movies, those that get the record contracts, the shows, the series, 1.81% of those working actors have children that identify as trans. That's 700 times larger than anyone or any group in the United States population. Now, what do you think about that? We go back to that one statement. Are they sacrificing their kids to be hip? And of course, you see it now forced on us in Homer's Odyssey, that crap that they put in, right? Isn't it odd that the same people in that movie, the same people associated with bashing anything American, anything conservative, bashing President Trump, happen to be within a group that when you compare them to the rest of the U.S. population, they are 700 more times to actually have a child that identifies as trans. I'm telling you, that's a number to look at. And when you look at that, even old names are being recycled and getting new movie contracts, and a lot of these contracts happen to be associated with that very tiny group, there's a lot to consider here that, wow, maybe they have something to it, that Hollywood, the N in Hollywood, are in fact sacrificing their own children to a satanic cabal to be famous. And by the way, that child has a 400% more chance than any other child in the world being successful at something Satan wants, and that's suicide. Are these Hollywood people trading their kids? It's just something to think about. Let me know.